We've all seen it.
Yeah.
The huge wins, the $1 million pots, the bracelets, all that glitz.
Totally, it's the TV moments.
Exactly. But if you talk to anyone who actually plays seriously, they'll tell you that highlight reel. It's worlds away from the actual day-to-day grind.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to think of poker success as, just luck, a good run of cards. But the sources we looked at paint a very different picture. It's really not about luck at all in the long run.
That's right. Our sources make it clear that turning poker into a sustainable career, something you can actually rely on, it takes a specific formula.
The formula.
Yeah, it's not just knowing the odds, though that's part of it. It's this blend of real skill, deep strategy, serious discipline, and maybe most importantly, really strong emotional control. That's how they handle the variance, the ups and downs.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. We're going to get into the specifics, the journeys, the actual habits of these pros.
Exactly. We're kind of aiming to give you a shortcut, Understand the mindset, the strategies they use to stay profitable over time.
We really need to analyze how the legends approach the game when, the cameras aren't rolling. What are those technical skills? Sure, but also the personal traits that set them apart. And maybe crucially, how did they deal with those inevitable, sometimes crushing downswings?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that. It starts with some foundational elements, the core traits that really govern their success. So when you really analyze these high-performing players, the ones who last, you find this common set of foundational traits. Think of them like mental tools built specifically to handle pressure.
And I'm guessing this goes way beyond just knowing hand odds or basic strategy, or that stuff's kind of table stakes at that level.
Oh, absolutely. That's the minimum entry fee. The first core trait we see again and again is discipline. But not like I shouldn't eat cookies.
Right.
Discipline. It's discipline in the expected value sense, the EV sense. It means rigidly sticking to your calculated strategy, the mathematically sound play. Even if doing that just costs you $5,000 on a single hand.
Yeah.
Because the math said it was the right move long term. It's about fighting that very human impulse to chase losses, to try and win it back immediately on the next hand.
Okay, that idea of accepting a loss that was statistically correct, that sounds incredibly hard when real money is flying. That must be the ultimate defense against tilt, right? What players call tilt.
Exactly. And that ties straight into the next one. Emotional control. The pros are masters of managing tilt. Staying level-headed, whether they're on a massive heater or stuck in a painful downswing that could last weeks, maybe even months.
Weeks or months.
Oof. Yeah. The sources really stress that recognizing your specific emotional triggers what makes you tilt, and then neutralizing them, finding that leak, is just paramount.
Okay, so if they have this disciplined, fixed strategy, where does, flexibility come in? Poker seems like it needs aggression, constant adjustment.
Right. Good question. That tension is resolved by the third trait, adaptability. So while most top players start with a really solid game theory optimal or GPO baseline strategy.
The sort of mathematically perfect way to play if you didn't know your opponent.
Exactly. But the best players, they're constantly adjusting away from pure GTO towards an exploitative approach. They don't just play the same script against everyone. They're actively gathering info, spotting weaknesses or leaks in that specific opponent, and then pivoting their strategy to exploit those flaws.
Got it. So GTO is the foundation, exploitation is the edge. Now, the sources also seemed really clear that poker is a game of patience, which kind of feels counterintuitive sometimes, doesn't it, with all the bluffing and aggression?
It really does. And that brings us to patience. This is just crucial. It's the ability to wait for the right spots, the genuinely profitable opportunities, rather than trying to force things with mediocre hands.
Trying to make something happen.
Yeah, and the variance, the luck factor in the short term, is so brutal that forcing it with okay-ish hands, that's often what defines the amateur experience. The pro knows that sometimes survival, just staying in the game, means folding, waiting.
Okay. And then there are the two traits that seem focused on just getting better over time.
Right. Continuous learning. This is just non-negotiable at the top. Always analyzing your games, reviewing hands with software, talking to other players, refining your understanding of GTO and exploitation. Always learning.
And that links to the last one.
It does, very closely. Self-awareness. And this is more than just knowing you're, say, not great under pressure. It's about objectively identifying your specific leaks, the patterns in your play that good opponents can exploit. And let's be honest, that's maybe the hardest thing for anyone to do, right? To admit where you're weak.
Yeah, absolutely. What's so interesting here is, we've laid these out almost like strategic tools for managing a card game. But where it gets really fascinating is seeing how these traits actually plug out in the real career paths, the journeys of successful players.
Yeah, when you look at these stories, these sometimes really inspiring past players took, there seem to be four main lessons that emerge about how they actually structured their progress from just playing for fun to making it a real profession. That's right. And these journeys really show that building true expertise takes time. It's built patiently. So the first big lesson comes from how they started, from small games to global recognition. Very few successful players just jumped into the high-stakes scene.
Right. They didn't start under the bright lights. So the lesson is really don't rush it. Build the foundation first. They weren't chasing fame overnight. They were building like an expertise portfolio.
Precisely. The sources we looked at consistently noted that many players spent years mastering online poker, playing thousands and thousands of hands, or grinding small live tournaments.
Just getting the reps in.
Exactly. Getting the volume, seeing countless situations, recognizing opponent patterns, really internalizing GTO concepts before they even thought about risking bigger money against tougher players. They built up that solid expertise before they stepped into the bigger arenas.
Okay, that makes sense. Then the second lesson seems to tackle those downswings we mentioned, the inevitable losses, overcoming setbacks and building resilience.
Resilience is maybe the key differentiator for long-term success. The lesson sounds simple, but it's incredibly hard to put into practice. Losses are just data points, essential data points. Focus completely on analyzing the strategy, the decision-making process, not the frustration or the money lost.
Easier said than done, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
But one really good, actionable tip that came up was keeping a structured learning journal. Pros don't just note down lost a big pot. They record the hand history, the strategy leading up to it, their read on the opponent, even their emotional state at the time.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, that transforms a painful loss from just, an emotional gut punch into a calculated data set they can review later to find patterns and improve.
Turning drama into data. I like that. Okay, the third lesson seems to shift focus entirely away from the table, but apparently it dictates what happens on it, balancing lifestyle and mindset for longevity.
This one's critical and maybe overlooked by amateurs. The sources were really clear. Mental and physical wellness are just as important as technical poker skill.
Really, as
Yeah.
important.
Think about it. The sheer cognitive load of playing a 12 or 14-hour tournament session, making complex decisions under pressure the whole time. Players who sustain success treat their bodies and minds like athletes do. Disciplined routines, proper sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental health practices, all specifically geared towards long-term cognitive endurance.
Right.
Things like regular exercise, good food, scheduling actual downtime away from poker. They find it drastically improves focus and decision quality during those long, draining sessions.
So it reframes poker less as just a brain game and more as a mental and physical endurance challenge. The mind needs recovery, just like a muscle. Okay, and finally, the fourth lesson gets into actually making it a job, turning passion into a career.
Yeah, this step requires that consistent effort we talk about, but also, importantly, professional networking and structure. The lesson really is, passion is great, but passion plus persistent, calculated growth equals progress.
Calculated growth.
Meaning, actively seeking out coaching, attending workshops, rigorously reviewing hands with peers or study groups, joining professional communities, and crucially, understanding bankroll management. Not like a hobbyist playing with spare cash, but like a small business owner managing capital investment and risk.
It's probably important here to remind ourselves, and you listening, that even these success stories, they all feature struggles, right? Real pitfalls. Understanding just how tough the challenge is helps us appreciate why these pro strategies are so necessary.
Definitely. And the challenges mostly boil down to the sheer intensity and volume of play. First, you've got the online poker stress factors. For many pros, this environment is extremely intense.
How so?
Well, many successful online players use multi-tabling. That means playing, say, 4, 6, maybe even more tables simultaneously, which leads to this constant high-speed barrage of decisions, hand after hand, table after table.
Wow, okay. That must build up incredibly quickly, leading directly to, I guess, decision fatigue.
Absolutely. Making literally hundreds of high-stakes, complex, nuanced decisions in a single session is just mentally exhausting. It drains your cognitive
And
resources.
this leads to mistakes.
Exactly. And then there are the broader poker lifestyle risks.
Mhm.
The long, often unsociable hours, serious sleep disruption from late nights or travel, potential social isolation. These are common issues that can severely impact overall health and, consequently, your thinking clarity at the table.
Yeah, you hear about that.
And we also have to mention the risk of emotional dependence or even addiction signs. Pros have to be vigilant about screening for that, letting the game consume everything or having their self-worth tied completely to results. That harms performance and well-being.
Okay, so managing that volume, mitigating that intense mental load, that seems to be the absolute key to staying sharp and maintaining that peak EV performance long term. So, what specific strategies do the pros actually use? How do they manage these risks?
They implement really strict professional routines, almost like systems designed to automate good habits for mental health and recovery. They don't just study their wins, they analyze every game, win or lose, rigorously.
Using software.
Often, yeah. Using specialized software to review hand histories, identify patterns, root out their own leaks. They also proactively maintain emotional balance. This isn't just hoping they don't tilt. They actively practice things like mindfulness or meditation. They treat stress reduction as a non-negotiable part of their training regime.
So it's like a proactive defense against the pressure and the swings rather than just reacting when things go bad.
Exactly. It's preventative maintenance for the mind. They also set clear, realistic goals. But crucially, these goals are often focused on things they can control, like hours played, hands analyzed, skills worked on, protecting their bankroll not just on winning X amount, which is subject to variance.
Right, process over outcome.
Precisely. And very importantly, they build a support network. Mentors, trusted peers, study groups, people who can give objective feedback, especially during those tough downswings when your own judgment might be clouded.
That outside perspective must be vital.
Hugely. And as we touched on, physical fitness is prioritized, not just for general health, but because they know it measurably boosts cognitive energy, focus, and endurance during long playing sessions. And knitting all this together is rigorous time management, structuring their days and weeks with routines that deliberately build in rest and recovery to fight burnout.
Okay, let's try and synthesize this. Maybe the clearest way to see the difference is to directly compare the typical amateur approach versus the professional approach across these key areas we've discussed. It really highlights how these seemingly small, consistent differences add up to massive divergence in long-term results.
Yeah, this contrast is super instructive. It shows the huge gulf between just, hoping for success and deliberately building it. So, take decision-making. The amateur, often impulsive, emotional, reacting to the last hand, won or lost, maybe feeling due for a win.
Playing on feelings.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
professional, calculated and strategic. Their decisions are driven purely by data, logic, long-term EV. They try to make the same correct play regardless of whether they won or lost the last 5 pots.
Okay. And how they approach learning, that seems fundamental too.
It defines their trajectory. The amateur's learning is often sporadic, reactive. Maybe they only crack open a book or watch a video after a particularly bad session. Treating learning like medicine they only take when sick.
Right.
Professional sees learning as continuous and proactive. Every session, win or lose, is raw data, an opportunity to learn and refine, which ties directly into their overall mindset.
How so?
The amateur tends to be short-term and outcome-focused. Obsessed with this session's results, this tournament's finish. The professional has a long-term, process-focused mindset. They understand variance is real, and the only things they truly control are the quality of their decisions and their discipline over time.
And the sources were really clear that lifestyle management often separates those who make it long-term from those who burn out, right?
Oh, it's a stark difference. The amateur often neglects health, has erratic sleep, poor diet, maybe plays excessively long hours without breaks. They compromise the very cognitive engine they need.
Undermining themselves.
Totally. The professional is wellness-focused. They maintain structured, balanced routines specifically designed to support peak mental and physical function for the demands of the game. And finally, look at handling stress. The amateur often gets overwhelmed by pressure, experiences severe tilt, makes costly emotional mistakes. The professional, they've practiced and employ effective coping strategies to stay in control, or at least recognize when they need to step away.
Yeah. The sources gave some really cool, specific examples, too, showing there isn't just one single path, but consistency is always key. Like, there was The analyst, right? Someone who meticulously tracked every single online hand, thousands of them, to build databases and refine exploitative plays against specific types of opponents.
Exactly. Then there was the resilient one, someone who was really open about their journey, battling major setbacks, huge downswings, and really focusing on mastering the mental game, the tilt control aspect.
Yeah, that was powerful.
And critically, there was also the balanced player, someone who made it clear they explicitly prioritized wellness, strict routines, having a social life outside of poker, right alongside their game study, ensuring their high-performance years were stable and could be sustained for longer. These examples just reinforce that point. Mental discipline, objective self-management, adaptability, these often outweigh just raw card sense. That's what wins consistently. Hashtag outro. So, yeah, to kind of synthesize this whole deep dive, success in this really demanding high-variance world, it's earned. It comes from dedication, sure, but also relentless technical practice and a proactive mindset where the player understands that they themselves are the biggest variable they need to manage. That mental discipline, the self-care routines, they aren't optional extras for pros. They're basically the prerequisites for being able to perform at a high level consistently over time.
It seems like this analysis really shows that awareness, self-awareness, and balance are the most effective tools for managing the inherent risks in any field that involves complex decision-making under pressure, not just poker. What really stands out to you listening to this and how the pros approach building that strategic resilience?
Wow.
The sources definitely suggest that if you're starting out or trying to improve, the focus should intensely be on starting small, building that support network, learning to maintain that separation between emotion and rational decision making, and actually practicing those stress reduction techniques daily. That seems to be the real formula for success, doesn't it? Whether you're at a high stakes poker table or, facing complex challenges anywhere else.
Absolutely foundational stuff.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the strategic mindset of success. We hope you found it valuable. We'll see you next time.